The NATO map is changing fast. Who will be left out? New lines, old false maps are supposed to define the world we live in. But what happens when the map begins to move without war, without conquest, but with alliances? In 2022, NATO had 30 members. In 2025, it has 32. But more importantly, it now stretches from the Arctic Circle to the Black Sea, armed, integrated, and on alert. Borders have shifted. So have loyalties. And for the first time since the Cold War, the question is no longer just who's in NATO, but who's been left out and why. The new face of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was once a fixed club of Cold War, defensive pact of Western democracies facing the Soviet Union. Today, it is something else. A constantly evolving military alliance, adapting to hybrid warfare, cyber threats, and geopolitical fragmentation. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, NATO has expanded faster than at any time in its modern history. Finland joined in 2023. Sweden followed in 2024. Defense budgets have surged across Europe. Forward bases are now active in territories that were neutral just a few years ago. But NATO's evolution is more than military. It is political, strategic, and selective. Behind the headlines of unity lie deeper questions. Who is being included in this new security framework? Who remains outside and why? What happens to the countries trapped between NATO's perimeter and Russia's influence? There are nations asking to join but being denied. There are others resisting NATO by ideology, neutrality, or fear of provoking a larger war. And there are members within the alliance whose roles are now more uncertain than ever before. According to internal documents leaked from NATO's Strategic Planning Division, the alliance is no longer seeking to be universal. It is shaping itself around cohesive operational zones, focused on response speed, resource integration, and digital dominance, not symbolic inclusion. This means some countries are being left behind, intentionally. In this report, we explore 5 regions and actors affected by NATO's changing map, each in what power looks like when drawn not just in borders, but in alliances. 1. The Nordic reinforcement. From neutral to nuclear-capable, Finland and Sweden were once case studies in Cold War neutralities. Table. Peaceful, unaligned. But by 2025, both are fully integrated NATO members, and the transformation has been rapid. Finland, with its 1,340 kilometers border with Russia, now hosts NATO surveillance and logistics infrastructure, stretching from Lapland to the Gulf of Finland. US and British troops conduct seasonal training exercises deep in the Arctic zone, preparing for scenarios involving Northern Theater denial, military code for blocking Russian naval access to the North Atlantic. Sweden, once cautious, has signed nuclear hosting contingency clauses as part of its NATO obligations. Leaked Swedish Defense Ministry documents reveal that Gotland Island, strategically located in the Baltic Sea, has been quietly upgraded to accommodate NATO command and control assets in case of regional escalation. Both countries are now forward operating environments, with interoperability protocols extending from local airspace control to deep-sea communications arrays. The integration is not symbolic, it's strategic. But their full membership changes more than geography, it alters the balance in the Baltic. Now finds itself nearly surrounded in the north, and its options for projecting force through Kaliningrad are reduced to fragile corridors between Poland, Lithuania, and the sea. The Nordic shift is complete, but its implications are not. By joining NATO, Sweden and Finland have closed a chapter on neutrality that lasted over half a century. And in doing so, they have helped redraw NATO's northern edge not as a fence, but as a launch platform. 2. Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia membership denied, borders exposed. If the Nordic countries represent NATO's successful expansion, then Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia are the frozen cases caught between alliance rhetoric and real-world exclusion. Ukraine is the most obvious. Despite receiving billions in military aid, real-time battlefield intelligence, and satellite coordination, it remains outside NATO's Article 5 guarantee. As of 2025, Ukraine has no formal accession pathway, blocked not by capability, but by political consensus among existing members. Why? Because a Ukraine under attack cannot be fully admitted without triggering collective defense obligations. NATO, despite its unity, is not prepared to go to war with Russia directly yet. Leaked NATO meeting transcripts from 2024 confirm this logic. The alliance has built a gray zone doctrine for Ukraine. Full support in everything except treaty-bound military intervention. Bases in Poland and Romania are now geared to resupply, rotate, and retreat, but not to engage across the border. Moldova finds itself in a similar bind. Small, militarily underdeveloped country with a breakaway Russian-backed regent Transnistria. Moldova has openly requested defense cooperation. What it received instead were observation missions, cyber defense packages, and NGO training programs. Georgia, too, remains a partner, but not member. After its brief war with Russia in 2008, its NATO ambitions stalled. Now, with Russian bases entrenched in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, Georgia's path is effectively closed to avoid escalation, say officials in Brussels. For these three countries, NATO is present but absent. Visible in weapons, uniforms, and satellite links, but not in security guarantees. They are buffer zones in all but name sacrifice, not by indifference, but by strategy. 3. The Balkan divide, Kosovo's hope. Serbia's resistance, the Western Balkans, remain a fault line not only of history, but of alignment. Kosovo, which declared independence in 2008, continues to push for full NATO recognition, though partially integrated through NATO's KFOR mission. Its path is blocked by non-recognition from 4 NATO members: Spain, Greece, Slovakia, and Romania. These holdouts, wary of their own separatist issues, prevent Kosovo from accessing the alliance's full structure. 8. Behind closed doors? Leaked EUFOR briefing notes describe Kosovo's situation as one of de facto inclusion without strategic clarity. NATO troops remain on the ground, and military training continues. But Kosovo lacks the guarantees that come with a flag at NATO's Brussels headquarters. Meanwhile, Serbia remains openly aligned with Russia and refuses NATO accession. It conducts joint military exercises with Belarus and China, maintains strong energy ties with Moscow, and has rejected Western sanctions on Russia. Yet paradoxically, Serbia also hosts limited NATO cooperation programs and participates in Partnership for Peace initiatives. Intelligence assessments from 2025 show a divided Serbian defense, establishment with one wing open to Western alignment and another firmly embedded in Russian military doctrine. Bosnia and Herzegovina, still technically a candidate, has stalled in its NATO pathway due to internal divisions, particularly from the Bosnian Serb entity, which opposes accession entirely and echoes Kremlin narratives. Thus, the Balkans are fractured not just ethnically or politically, but strategically. NATO is here but unevenly. Its lines of influence cut across unresolved conflicts, nationalist ideologies, and ethnic memories of 1999. This region may not be NATO's priority, but it remains one of its most vulnerable seams, and one where silence has never lasted long.